Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Reading from Canto 5, Chapter 18, Text number 3. Aho vichitram bhagavat vicheshtitam, Ghinantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati, Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum, Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati. Aho vichitram bhagavat vicheshtitam, Gnantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati, Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum, Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati. Aho vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam, Gdantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati, Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum, Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati. Aho vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam, Nantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati, Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum, Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati.
Aho vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam,
Vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam,
Nantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati,
Nantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati,
Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum,
Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum,
Nihritya putram pitaram jijivishati.
Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati.
Aho vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam,
Aho vichitram bhagavad vicheshtitam,
Anantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati,
Nantam janoyam hi mishanna pashyati,
Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum,
Dhyayan asadyarhi vikarma sevitum, Nirhitya putram pitaram jijivishati. Word to word meanings. Aho, alas. Vichitram, wonderful. Bhagavat vicheshtitam, the pastimes of the Lord. Gnantam, death. Jana, a person. Ayam, this. He, certainly. Mission, although seeing. Na pashyati, does not see. Dhyayam, thinking about asat, material happiness, yarhi, because, vikarma, forbidden activities, sevitum, to enjoy, nirhitya, burning, putram, sons, pitaram, the father, jiji vishati, desires a long life. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Alas, how wonderful it is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. He knows that death will surely come, yet he is nevertheless callous and neglectful. If his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property, and if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possessions as well. In either case, he heedlessly tries to enjoy material happiness with the acquired money. Purport. Material happiness means to have good facilities for eating, sleeping, sexual intercourse, and defense. Within this world, the materialistic person lives only for these four principles of sense gratification, not caring for the impending danger of death. After his father's death, a son tries to inherit his money and use it for sense gratification. Similarly, one whose son dies tries to enjoy the possessions of his son. Sometimes the father of a dead son even enjoys his son's widow. Materialistic person behave in this way. Thus Shukdev Goswami says, how wonderful are these pastimes of material happiness transacted by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, materialistic persons want to commit all kinds of sinful activities, but without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can do anything. Why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead permit sinful activities? The Supreme Lord does not want any living being to act sinfully, and He begs him through His good conscience to refrain from sin. But when someone insists upon acting sinfully, the Supreme Lord gives him the sanction to act at his own risk. Matta smritir jnanam aponam cha. No one can do anything without the sanction of the Lord. But He is so kind that when the conditioned soul persists in doing something, the Lord permits the individual soul to act at his own risk. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, sons always outlive their fathers in other planetary systems and other lands in this universe, especially on Swargaloka. However, on this planet Earth, a son often dies before his father, and the materialistic father is pleased to enjoy the possessions of his son. Neither the father nor the son can see the reality that both of them are awaiting death. When death comes, however, all their plans for material enjoyment are finished. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroh Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Naragunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashat Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarobhisha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabadanyaya Krishna Krim Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Tushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatam ham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So we are discussing from this chapter, the 5th canto, 18th chapter, which was the prayers that are offered to the Lord by the residents of Jambudip. So in this entire chapter, we will be seeing how different residents of Jambudip, they'll be offering different prayers to the Lord. And how, as we discussed in the previous classes as well, that in all these planetary systems that are there, be it all the different dvipas that are there or the different islands within the dvipas, so in all these different dvipas, there is different incarnations of the Supreme Lord. And everywhere, these personalities who are there or even the people, even though their living standards is very high, we see except from this dvipa that is there, the Bharatvarsha that is there, all other places are meant for enjoyment. This is what we discussed previously. And everywhere the standard of living is very high. But still we see everywhere the residents who are there, they are involved in worshipping the Supreme Lord or offering praise to the Supreme Lord. And on the contrary, this is the place which is meant for actually practicing devotional service, meant for practicing austerity. But here we see just the opposite. So in other places, everywhere we'll see these amazing prayers are being offered by the residents, by the personalities, and they are worshipping and they are praying to the Supreme Lord. So in this specific verse we see, here they are talking about a Shukdev Goswami speaking about the wonderful nature of the Lord, the wonderful nature of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Basically, he is expressing wonder at one of the aspects, that how we see or how death comes for every person, and yet a person na pashyati, or yet a person is not able to see that. We see similar wonder was even expressed when Yamraj was asking Yudhishthir Maharaj. Very similar sloka where he also asked that what is the most wonderful in this thing in this world. And there Yudhishthir Maharaj also says that very famous shloka, Ahani ani bhutani gachanti yamalayam shesha sthavaran icchanti kim asharyam ataparam. So he also says the same thing which is mentioned here, that even though when Yamraj was asking Yudhishthir Maharaj that what is the thing that is most wonderful in this world or what is the greatest wonder in this world, he also says a similar thing, that even though every person in this world is seeing that so many people are dying around him, or as it's mentioned in this word, at one or the other point his father dies, grandfather dies, then father dies, and sometimes unfortunately even the son dies in the presence of the father. But still after all this, the person does not see his impelling or that is inevitable. Still a person ignores that fact, and still a person is not concerned about that this can happen to him as well. Still a person remains in ignorance. And that is what the greatest wonder, that is what Yudhishthir Maharaj describes as the greatest wonder. And same thing we see even in this shloka, where Shukdev Goswami is also expressing the same wonder, that although a foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. And then it's mentioned that he knows that death will surely come. So one thing everyone knows who has little intelligence, because we say that human beings, they have a higher intelligence. So everyone can analyze, everyone can understand that death will surely come. For everyone it will come. But still he is nevertheless callous and neglectful. Even a materialist is aware of about the fact, but the difference is he doesn't care about this. He just thinks maybe it will come someday, we'll see it that time, but he doesn't care to make some preparations before death. He's completely callous or neglectful about it. But and then this thing that is mentioned is, if his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property. And if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possession. So the point that is mentioned, the reason we are here in this world, the reason we rebelled against the Lord, because we wanted to enjoy separately. And here also, even though so many sufferings are there, even though the person understands that that impending death will even come to him, still he is completely neglectful, he remains completely callous and just thinking about how he can enjoy his life. And it's so wonderful, that's what Shukdev Goswami is also expressing his wonder, that even if so many unfortunate things happens, first his father dies, still the thought that comes into him is, or the thought that is going on in his mind is that how he can enjoy his life. And then even if the son dies, the same thing is going on. There also he thinks about enjoying, and Prabhupada even explains that sometimes it's seen in this world that the father is enjoying with the son's widow also. So this is how the complete tendency is towards the enjoyment, and the person even after seeing all these things is not able to understand. Same verse comes in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where also it says, Deha patya kalatradishu atma sanyashu asatsa api tesham pramutto nidhanam pashyan apina pashyati. There also something similar to this na pashyati comes, that there also it's mentioned the same thing, that a person who experiences all these sufferings in his life, he a person who is devoid of this self-realization, devoid of Atma Tattva, and who is not inquiring about what is the actual problem of life, what is the purpose of life, completely attached to the fallible soldiers that are there. So there in that shloka, some entities are mentioned as soldiers. And what are these soldiers? They talks about kalatradishu, or the family of a person, the wife, children, and so many different attachments. The person considers them as soldiers. But that shloka very nicely explained that they are all fallible soldiers. Fallible means they are end to die, or no one is actually permanent in this world. And there also same thing, pashyan apina pashyati. Even though the person sees all these things, person with time understands all these things, but still he does not realize, or still he does not take care of his inevitable destruction that is going to happen. Still a person ignores the necessities or the important thing that is needed in his life. And there we say that Krishna also in the Gita explains all these things. He also talks about that how this world is dukkhalayam ashasvatam. This world is miserable, full of miseries. This world is temporary. In that purport, Prabhupada also explains that this is a world of death, or a world where everyone in any planetary system. So now in these cantos, we are discussing about people in different planetary systems. We are discussing about the different dvipas. We discussed about the standard of enjoyments, that how there are so many facilities for enjoyment. About the different swargas also we discussed. The Bhauma Sarga, Bila Swarga, and the Swarga that is actually there in the upper planetary systems. But one thing that is mentioned is, Prabhupada very nicely lights, that anywhere in all the planetary systems, death will always be there. And the entire life, it's not that death will be the only time when the person will face struggle. The entire life that is there, that will also be full of struggles. It's like a sort of fight going on against this Maya, or the material energy of the Lord. So no one at any point of time can be happy in this world. Entire life they'll be full of struggle, and then ultimately the last point where the body will be taken away. And Prabhupada gives a very nice example that he actually used some very harsh, very strong language. He speaks that everyone is a dead body flapping for a few days. The point he's trying to make is that ultimately everyone has to die and the body is dead. We understand the soul is the one who is conscious. And because of the presence of the soul, just like a bird flaps for some time, we see so many birds, after some time they stop flapping and sit on the terrace. So similarly, here also everyone is a dead body sitting only flapping for a few days. And after that everything will be over. And same thing we were reading yesterday also in the Bhakti Vaibhava, we are preparing that thing. That what is the life of a materialistic person, that entire life, how he is involved with so many things, or how he gets attached to the fallible soldiers. So there also a nice description in the Bhagavatam, again in the third canto that comes, which we were reading, that how a materialistic person, first he becomes attached to his so-called expansion. So first he becomes attached to his wife because of the embraces, because of the sweet talks, and then with the children the person becomes attached, and so on and so forth. The person just becomes completely engrossed in that family life. And there also it's described that he tries it different ways. He tries so many ways, he tries to earn money by hook or crook, but different ways, committing violence on others, cheating others, just to satisfy those family members. But then very nice the explanation is given that even after trying all that, no one is satisfied. First of all, he also has to undergo sin for cheating others, for stealing from others. He also has to face hellish conditions, and the people he is trying to satisfy, no one actually gets satisfied. And in this way, he spends his entire life, and when he becomes old, then his condition is also that comparison is given, just like the farmers who are there, who are milking the cows. And when the cows become old, or the ox that were given, the ox which are old, they're just left just like that. When they cannot do anything, they cannot help them in the fields, the miserly farmers, they don't take care of them. And same way, this person who is completely attached to his family members, completely taking care of his family members, trying to satisfy them, But at the end, no one is satisfied, and when this person is what you call invalid, he's not able to do anything for them, they start completely neglecting him. Or no one actually takes care of him. And that's why a person is in a very, very lamentable situation. Everyone around him is lamenting. He's also engrossed in that. He's also thinking what will happen to them. And in this way, very, very in an unfortunate situation, he leaves his body. And this description very nicely is Prabhupada writes that the best way is a person at the end, at least, he should go away from home, or he should go away in a place, leave his body where he can remember, or he doesn't remember or becomes completely attached just to that same family. Otherwise, unfortunately, he'll have to take birth there again. So this is how we see the description that is given in this verse also, that how this impending death is there for everyone, but still a person does not realize that how it can come at any time, or that snake of time can any time come and bite or take away the entire life that is there. And that's why here it's mentioned that after this, within this world, the materialistic person lives only for these four principles of sense gratification, not caring for the impending danger of death. And this is what these great personalities, they express their wonder, or Shukdev Goswami and other persons, they express their wonder that how people are so much enamored by this material energy of the Lord. And then as we discussed, that materialistic person wants to commit all kinds of sinful activity, but without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can do anything. So he wants to engage in all sinful activities, engage in different kinds of activities just to satisfy the people around, not caring for the purpose of life. And there also he needs the sanction of the Lord. He might not worship the Lord, he might not take care of the Lord, but any activity he does, sanction of the Lord is necessary everywhere. And this is a very, very important factor, that to understand how the living entity are stuck in this world and how they are just completely engrossed in these activities. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in that famous poem of Michhe Mayara Base Jacho Bhese Khacho Habudubu Bhai. It's a little funny that is. But the point is that how in this world, the comparison that is mentioned is that how in this world it's like a great ocean of material nature. And here everyone is tossed. And everyone is being pulled in this ocean or pulled in the waves of this material nature. And the comparison is given to the whirlpool that is there. So sometimes in these rivers and oceans we see great whirlpools are formed. And anyone who gets stuck in that whirlpool, he is not able to come out. By his own effort, whatever he does, and even if someone else tries, it's very, very difficult for him to come out. And same way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also writes that just like these waves of material nature, we are like that foaming bubbles that are there. We come together in so-called family life and immediately everything gets disappeared. Or just like those bubbles in those waves, our entire existence also ends. But still a person remains callous. That's what this verse said, that still a person remains callous and neglectful. Still a person thinks about enjoyment, still a person thinks, or as it's mentioned, that the father is thinking how I can enjoy even the property of my own son, or how I can enjoy the property of my father. This is what he's thinking even after such a precarious condition. He is just thinking about his enjoyment. And then explanation is given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that here in this planet it happens that the son, he passes away before the father. But in other planetary systems it seems this is not the case. Son mostly outlives, or especially he explains in the Sargoloka, son mostly outlives the life of the father, or lives more and doesn't die before the father. But then that also hardly makes a difference. Still the tendency for enjoyment is always there. Even the son may not die, he may enjoy the property of his father, or someone else he may enjoy the property. But the tendency to enjoyment is always there, be it in the upper planetary systems, be it lower planetary systems, or always within the entire material world. Unless a person takes shelter of the Lord. And that is why many times these devotees or great devotees like Shukdev Goswami, they experience or they get bewildered by this thing of bewildered by these descriptions. That how strong is the illusory energy of the Lord that everyone in this world becomes enamored by it. And even after seeing all these things, the person is not able to see or not able to understand what is actually happening. And we see this in prayers of great devotees throughout the Bhagavatam. How they express wonder at the different activities of the Lord, or express wonder at the illusory energy of the Lord. And they also express their bewilderment that how everyone is illusioned by your energy, they are not able to see the reality. Even we see in the prayers of Kunti Maharani. She also expresses a similar prayer. She says, Janma karma cha vishwatman ajasya akartur atmanaha tiryan nishushu yadushu tad atyanta vidambanam. So there she is also saying, she is also expressing her vidambanam, or the bewilderment, that how she also gets bewildered sometimes at the activities of the Lord, or different activities the Lord does. She is telling that Janma karma, that you takes your birth and you do so many activities. And in the next line he tells, Ajasya akartur atmanaha. That even though you take your birth, you do so many activities, but still you are unborn. Still you do not have any activities to do. And this we see in the Vedas, the description that Prabhupada often quotes, Natasya karnam karanam cha vidyate. The Lord actually has nothing to do, he actually has no activities to perform, but still he does so many activities. Still, and then she says, Tiryan nishushu yadushu. That you come in so many different forms of life. You come as a fish. You come, Tiryan means you come as an animal. You come in the form of a human being as Lord Ramchandra. You come in the form of sages like Naranarayan Rishi and so many other sages. And then you come in the form of aquatics like the fish incarnation, we know the Matsya incarnation. And animals like the boar incarnation and many others that are there. So she is saying, even though you are unborn, even though you don't have any activities to do, still you do so many activities, and that is very bewildering. That is very surprising. And this is how we see that all these devotees that are there, they also sometimes express the surprise or wonder at the activities of the Lord. And many such personalities, even Bhishma Dev we know for that matter. So this pastime, when it happens, when Yudhishthira Maharaj, after the entire battlefield of Kurukshetra, so he was bewildered in his duties, or he was feeling so much repentant at the loss of so many people, or killing so many people just because of the kingdom. He was thinking that he has committed so many sinful activities, killed so many people just because of the kingdom, and then he is not fit to rule the kingdom. He should not rule the kingdom. And that time the description comes, Vyasdev is trying to tell him, trying to pacify him. Even the Supreme Lord himself is trying to pacify him. But then that time he is not getting consoled, or he is not getting pacified. He is too much bewildered or too much morose. And that time Lord only inspires him from within, and they go to the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that place where Bhishma Dev was there. And there also Bhishma Dev expresses the same kind of aspects or the same kind of wonders about different activities that had happened to Pandavas. So just when Bhishma Dev sees all these people approaching, he also starts saying that what are the terrible sufferings you all have gone through. Throughout your life you went through so many sufferings. We know the different kinds of sufferings Pandavas went through in their entire life. The Vishan, the poison that was tried on Bhima to kill Bhima, the poison that was given to him by Duryodhan. The Agni, the Lakshagraha where they were put in, they were tried to be burnt inside that Lakshagraha. They were tried to, many man-eaters were there, cannibals who tried to eat up the Pandavas when they were in the forest. And in so many different ways they tried to be killed or they tried to be destroyed. And Bhishma Dev expresses wonder in this, that even though you are son of religion personified, even though you are such great personalities, and ideally this should not have happened, but still so many reverses came in your life. And there he says that this is just the influence of the time. And finally he says that this influence of the time which is under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all this I see is the plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even for me, even though he himself is a great Mahajan and all of them came to accept teachings from him, he himself says that it is not easy for even me to understand this plan of the Lord. Or even I cannot understand what this plan of the Lord is. Our Lord actually, there he explains that Lord actually wanted to teach everyone how to establish virtue and how vice can never win. Even though Bhishma Dev was on the side of Kauravas, so many great people were on the side of Kauravas. Lord wanted to establish, and because of that Pandavas went through so many sufferings. But then Bhishma Dev is expressing wonder that very difficult to understand this entire plan of the Lord, or very difficult to understand what is there going on in the mind of the Lord. And that's why one very important thing to understand, or which Prabhupada explains in that, is the best thing is to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. Or to understand whatever, not putting our head in trying to understand what should be the plan of the Lord or what is the actual plan of the Lord, but just to follow what are the orders of the Lord without any argument. Just like the Pandavas, Throughout the life, they went through so many sufferings. They were in the forest, in different places. They went to so many different activities. Draupadi, we know what happened to her when she was brought in that Asat Sabha, or that assembly where they tried to disrobe her. So Pandavas went through so many sufferings, but still they were always following the orders of the Lord, or still they were always devoted to the Supreme Lord. And this is what is explained, that ultimately one should surrender to the plan of the Lord instead of trying to use his own intelligence just to understand the plan of the Lord. And that that a very amazing thing, that, and even in Prabhupada's life we see the same thing. Prabhupada, when he went to the West, when he reached the West, when he writes that Markan Bhagavad Dharma, there also he says, or he's expressing his wonder that I do not know why you have brought me here. He's writing a prayer, he's expressing to Lord Krishna that I do not know why I am here. All these people there in the modes of passion and ignorance, and why you have brought me here I don't understand, but still I know that you must be having a plan. Or you must be having a plan, and whatever your plan is, please make me an instrument and execute it through me. This is what we see the nature of great devotees, even though they are sometimes bewildered by the nature of the Lord, bewildered by the plan of the Lord, still they just surrender to the will of the Lord, and they just want to be instruments in executing the plan of the Lord. Or they just want to do what the Lord desires. And that is why very amazingly in that prayer Prabhupada says that I just want to be your instrument, and whatever you desire, make me do or make me engage in that service just so that I can execute your will. So this is how we understand, this is how in this verse also we see Shukdev Goswami was expressing his wonder. Says how great all the great devotees, they express their wonder. Sometimes they are also bewildered in the activities of the Lord. But even after all that, finally they just pay their obeisances to the Lord, and they agree to execute by the desire of the Lord, or by the plan of the Supreme Lord. Even Kunti Maharani in the last of his prayers, she says like that Yogeshwara Khilo Guru Bhagavan Namaste. That you are the master of all mystic powers, you are the guru of the entire universe, and I just offer my obeisances to you. Even though you are very difficult to understand, but whatever it is, I just want to follow the plan of your Lordship, or I just want to do whatever you desire. And this is how we see that every devotee, even though sometimes they are bewildered, but they just surrender, they should abide by the orders of the Lord without argument, or by the plan of the Supreme Lord, words of the Shastras without argument. So now another thing that is discussed in this verse is, why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead permit sinful activities? So this also Prabhupada explains that ultimately many times this is said that Lord is permitting all these sinful activities. Maybe is he desiring that sinful activities should happen? Does he desire that living entities should undergo through so much suffering? And here Prabhupada clarifies that very nicely. He says, Supreme Lord does not want any living being to act sinfully. And how can we understand? That also can we understand that any person in this world. And it's not just for devotees who have a conscience or who understand these things. He says for any person in this world, that voice of conscience is there, some insight that happens whenever a person does some sin, he feels that I should not do this. Or at least if he has even little bit consciousness, little bit developed consciousness, he understands this something is wrong, I should not do this. And this is just the activity of the Supreme Lord, how he sits in Paramatma and he tells her, he is the one who gives that dictation that this is a wrong activity, you should not commit. But still, what is the issue or what is the problem that is there, that someone still insists that I want to act sinfully. He doesn't listen to this order of the Lord. The Supreme Lord gives him the sanction to act on his own risk. So here very clearly it is understood that it's not the Supreme Lord who is permitting sinful activities. Rather it is the living entities who are desiring these sinful activities. They are the ones who desire to act in so many abominable ways. And Lord just permits their sinful activity. Lord just sanctions their activity when the person desires like anything. Now question comes, that desire comes in everyone. Conditioned soul, a person is, well, everyone gets sinful desires, everyone acts sinfully, or that desire persists in everyone. Material people, they get that desire and they just act upon it. And now another thing that is seen and that Prabhupada discusses later in the coming verses about how even sometimes a person who is practicing devotional service, who wants to get out of the cycle of birth and death, who understands these are sinful activities, even he sometimes gets sinful desires and he also acts on his. Or he also gets distracted from the path of devotional service. And that's why very important to understand that when this question is asked, why the Supreme Personality of Godhead permits sinful activities, why even in the case of practicing devotees or devotees who are trying to get out of these sinful activities, even they end up committing sinful activities. or they are, or someone may say that why doesn't the Lord helps them to stop these sinful activities? So we have discussed this previously. There are two energies of the Lord, or the Maya has two energies. One is the Avranatmika Shakti and second is the Prakshepatmika Shakti. And very nicely it explains this Avranatmika Shakti is the covering potency of the Lord. That is what we have been discussing till now, that how everyone in this world gets covered up because of the illusory potency and tries to find happiness in this world because of this covering of illusion, thinks that he can be happy in this world. Now the other potency that is there, that is also very important to understand. That is what we are trying to understand now, that how even if a person is trying his best, or a person is practicing devotional service, trying to get out of the clutches of the illusory energy, still why does he sometimes fall down, or why does he also engage in sinful activities? And that is explained that this Prakshepatmika Shakti, or Prabhupada explains it as the throwing potency of the Lord. That a living entity tries to get out of the clutches of the Maya, tries to get out of the clutches of Maya. Maya also tries different ways, or acts in different ways, just to test the determination of the devotee. She also acts in different ways, and if a devotee is not careful, many times he also gets deviated from the path. So two things that Prabhupada mentions in that purport, or in the coming purports, about how even a devotee ends up committing sinful activities. And two things that he mentioned is, one is the association with the modes of nature, and second thing he mentions is inattentiveness. Or he mentions too much prolonged association with the modes of nature. So now question comes, what it means, like how for a person in general, a person who is staying outside, naturally association will be there with modes of nature. When a person associates with so many personalities around, naturally he'll be afflicted by the modes. But now when it comes to those who are practicing devotional service, how can they also get this association, or how can they also deviate from their path? So this is what we were discussing in the previous classes also. What are the different ways in even which a devotee can associate with these modes of nature? One of the examples that was given is reading the books, or reading books which are not authorized. So this is one of the ways of association, when we read some books which are not in the parampara, or which are not authorized books. And even though they may be great scholars, great personalities, but if we associate with them, or if we read the books, we are associating with those personalities. And because they are not devotees, or because they are not coming in our parampara, there are chances just by prolonged association we might get deviated from the path. Or we might also end up deviating from the correct path of devotional service. What are the other ways of associating with modes of nature? Many others are there. When we go out, when we are preaching to others, when we are distributing books, that time also we associate with so many personalities, or that time also we speak with so many personalities, and many times that also affects our consciousness. And this is what Prabhupada explained, that if this thing is prolonged, if prolonged association with the modes of nature is there, then sometimes it happens that a devotee also gets affected by the modes of nature. Means already we are affected. It means we will get more affected by the modes of nature, and then the person may end up committing sinful activities. So one thing that I was recently reading, it comes in the 11th canto, about the descriptions in the different modes of nature. And how we understand to practice spiritual life, primarily we need to practice, or we need to be in the mode of goodness. Then only there's a possibility we can practice spiritual life, we can be determined in our spiritual life and advance in spiritual life. So if we understand that how much we are associating with these modes of nature and how much we are degrading in our consciousness, then we can actually try to pull up our consciousness, or then at least that alarm can ring that our consciousness is getting degraded. So very important to understand what are the symptoms of these different modes that are there. Or we have discussed this, it comes in the Gita also, and even in the Bhagavatam this description comes in the teachings of Krishna to Vaibhava, where he tells about the different symptoms of different modes, and how we can analyze that we have got associated with some mode more than required, or we are going in the lower modes. And then try to get ourselves in the upper modes, or try to do or mold our life in such a way so that we can actually come to the mode of goodness. So we see many in those descriptions, or Krishna describes elaborately about the mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, and he gives a list of different symptoms that are there. So let's try to see what are the different symptoms that are there in the modes of passion. So in those teachings, Krishna talks about, which Krishna gives to Vaibhava, he speaks about the different symptoms of the mode of passion. One of the symptom is material desire. And this is amazing. This is symptom which we can also connect with even when we are practicing devotional service. If we are having too many material desires, if we are still having so many material desires to fulfill, so many desires to do which are not actually connected with spirituality, then we can understand that we are afflicted with the mode of passion. So, of course, Krishna says it clearly that these modes are not white and black, that one person will only be in one mode. But through this, we can understand what are the combinations of modes we have, and which mode we are primarily in, or which is the primary mode we are affected, or what are the most qualities of which mode we have. That way we can understand primary we are in which mode. So one of the qualities that we discussed is material desire. Of course, another of the qualities of mode of passion that was mentioned was great endeavor and dissatisfaction even in gain. So of course, this again applies only for material things, that a person is doing great endeavor for some material activity, or even if he gets some material benefit, he is still dissatisfied always. That is again a symptom of mode of passion. But of course, for spiritualists also we said that they should also always be dissatisfied. That is for serving the Lord more and more. They shouldn't feel satisfied that they are completely done with the service. So that is on a spiritual level, but here there is talking about material gain, that if a person gets too much materially, but he is dissatisfied in his material life. Then another symptom that was mentioned is considering oneself different and better than others. So this is also a very, very strong symptom of the mode of passion, that when a person starts thinking, or we can say when a devotee also starts thinking that he is different from others, or he is better from others, or he starts feeling like that he is someone great, or he is on a very, very different platform altogether, so that also he should understand is actually not a symptom of transcendental goodness, but is a symptom of mode of passion. So this is another thing that is mentioned, considering oneself different and better than others. Another symptom that is mentioned is, very, very relatable things are mentioned. Another thing mentioned is fondness for hearing oneself praised. So if a person is too fond, he always wants to hear glorification by others. He always wants to be glorified and always wants that thing. Then that is also a symptom of mode of passion. Another aspect, tendency to ridicule others. On one hand, he wants to hear glorification from everyone. He wants that everyone should praise him, everyone should speak nice things to others. But when it comes to his own attitude, then he wants to always ridicule others. He wants to taunt others, speak ill things about others, but for oneself he is expecting praise. So then a devotee should understand that he is primarily in the mode of passion, or mode of passion is existing within him. And a few other things, advertising one's own prowess. That is also near to that, having that thing of being praised, or advertising the greatness about oneself. That I am such a great devotee, or I have done so many things, or so many achievements, whatever there. If you advertise too much, that also again comes in the symptom of mode of passion. And finally, the last symptom that is mentioned is justifying one's actions by one's strength. That whatever a person does, then he justifies those actions, whatever, even if it's doing wrong actions, somewhere or the other, by the trick of words or whatever, he tries to justify those actions. So all these different, and one more that is mentioned is rash eagerness to fight. Always ready to fight, and fight normally or always doesn't mean that physically fighting with someone. Always ready to react to some situation and not listening to anyone. So that also comes in the eagerness to fight, or rash eagerness to fight. So all these things that are mentioned is, they come under the mode of passion. And if we are able to see some symptoms within ourselves, we should understand that we have also been contaminated by these modes. Or due to the prolonged association with material nature, we are also affected by these modes. And somewhere or the other, we have to make an endeavor to get rid or come back to the mode of goodness, at least to the mode of goodness, to practice devotional service. Same way, when it comes to different symptoms are mentioned about mode of ignorance as well. So one of the primary symptoms that was mentioned is anger. If a person exhibits too much anger, or of course sometimes it's said that in the service of the Lord, anger is justified when we are dealing with those who are blaspheming the devotees. But if in general, if a person is unnecessarily exhibiting anger or speaking ill with other devotees, not speaking in a proper way with other devotees, so then also that is also a symptom of mode of ignorance. Another symptom that is mentioned is intolerance. Not being tolerant at all, or getting agitated in small things, then also we can understand that that is a symptom of mode of ignorance. And another symptom which was very interesting is speaking without scriptural authority. Which sometimes in order to glorify oneself, we speak something here or there, which has no script. Sometimes we are not also aware where is the scriptural authority of that. So that also comes in the symptom of mode of ignorance, speaking without any scriptural background, spiritual authority, scriptural authority. Another thing, some few other things which we are already aware, sleeping too much, laziness, hypocrisy, saying something in the front and thinking something in the back. So all these symptoms also comes in the mode of ignorance. And one more thing that was mentioned is living as a parasite. So this also comes in the mode of ignorance. And for us it becomes more and more relevant since we are living in this ashram, so it becomes more and that we do justice to the activities, or we do the activities which are required of us. Otherwise we will also be criticized or as being in the mode of ignorance. So these were the different symptoms that were mentioned in the mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And as we have discussed in that, this comes in the third canto, that when we worship the Lord, even though we are practicing devotional service, but if we are affected by these lower modes, even if we are affected by mode of goodness, that worship will only extend our material existence. Unless we come to the practice of pure devotional service, we cannot get out of the clutches of cycle of birth, and that we will be only extending our material existence if we are affected too much by these lower modes of ignorance, lower modes of passion and ignorance. And then we'll discuss some aspects or some qualities of the mode of goodness as well. So how we can analyze that what are the qualities we are supposed to get, or we should try to get those qualities to at least stay in the mode of goodness. So of course the one basic thing that is mentioned is mind and sense control. Of course that also is at different levels, but at least we should aspire for these two things, controlling the mind, controlling the senses as much as possible. Of course by engaging the senses, engaging the mind in the service of the Lord. Another thing, another symptom of mode of goodness that is mentioned is tolerance. So now we discussed this previously. When it comes to intolerance, a person is very intolerant. That means he is primarily affected by the mode of ignorance. On the same way, if his tolerance level is increasing, or if he is able to tolerate things, tolerate especially the reverses in his life, then we can say his mode of goodness is, or he is developing that mode of goodness slowly and steadily. Another thing that is mentioned is sticking to one's prescribed duty. That no matter whatever happens, whatever ups and downs are happening in his personal life, he is always sticking to whatever the prescribed duties that are there. Of course, when we talk of prescribed duties, there are different duties of varnashrama. And for us, the prescribed duties are the different limbs of devotional service. So in whatever be the case, whatever happens, we have to stick to one's prescribed duties. Another very important point that is mentioned is being embarrassed at improper action. And this is also a very important point, that even if someone accidentally or whatever happens by the modes of pull of the modes of nature, a person ends up committing sinful, at least he feels embarrassed or he feels repentant for that. He feels guilty that I should not have done this activity, or this is not a correct activity, and he feels that embarrassed. Then also to some extent he can say that he is developing that mode of goodness. But if a person doesn't feel repentant or all, he just thinks it's okay, whatever happened has happened and doesn't matter, at least I'm still struggling on this with these modes, so it doesn't matter much, then he is not yet come in the mode of goodness, or he's still struggling in the lower modes. So this is one of the very important conditions, being embarrassed at one's improper action. And another point that was mentioned is satisfaction in any condition. Whatever the condition says, whatever the things the devotee is going through, whatever the circumstances he is staying in, or whatever prasad he is getting, so in whatever ways it is, he should be satisfied, or he should be satisfied in any condition, and he should be continuing to exhibit or practice his devotional service. So this way we can understand the symptoms of the three different modes are there. And with this we can understand that if we are in the lower modes, or most of our symptoms are there in the lower modes, then we are associating too much with these modes, or we are associating in the form of books, in the form of when we are talking to others, speaking with others, or different ways, some way or the other we are getting this association, and we may also end up committing, as we are discussing the matter of today, we may also end up committing sinful activities. So the point that was there is, it's not the Lord who is responsible for us committing sinful activities, it's we who desire, we who associate with these different modes and then end up committing sinful activities. So this was one of the aspects why does even a devotee gets those desires and does some sinful activities, because of the prolonged association of mode of nature. And second point he mentions is inattentiveness. When he is inattentive for a long time in his devotional practices, whatever activities he does, then also he gets deviated from the path of pure devotional service. So then he ends up doing some sinful activities. So as we have discussed previously also, we speak about this, that inattentive chanting is the mother of all offenses. And so many commentaries are given where it's mentioned that all the different kinds of offenses we do, be it if we are seeing material desires developing up within us, the tendency for mental speculation, tendency for committing offenses, all that comes, the basis is inattentive chanting. And different weeds that are there within us, instead of watering the Bhakti Lata beach, we end up watering those beets. So inattentiveness, when it comes to even inattentive chanting or doing other things in devotional service also inattentively, that is also a way a person deviates from devotional service, and then finally it also leads to fall down of a devotee. And that's why we say that spiritual life, or this comparison is given, that spiritual path is like the edge of a razor. That we have to be very, very careful in this, because a little inattentiveness, and just like we are shaving with the razor, then also anytime cut can happen, even with little attentiveness. So that is what is compared, that spiritual life is like the edge of a razor. And one thing to meditate, very amazing thing I was reading about this inattentiveness, that when it comes to us or when it comes to practicing devotees, naturally it happens that we are inattentive or we don't do our things attentively. But one very amazing thing to analyze is that even when we are inattentive, it's mentioned that Lord is always attentive to us, or in any circumstance. So this comes in the prayers of Gajendra. When he is praying to the Lord, he speaks about these things. He was an animal, he surrendered to the Lord. He was expressing, or he was praying many amazing prayers. He speaks to the Lord. And one of those prayers he says is, Bhuri Karunaya Namo Laraya. And there he says that an animal like me has surrendered to you. So now you should definitely shower your mercy onto me. And there further he speaks that even if I don't surrender to you, I know naturally you are showering your mercy on everyone. Even if a person is completely inattentive, completely doesn't care about the Lord, still the Lord is attentive to that person. And in that prayer he says that what to speak about us. Even the non-devotees are there who deny the existence of the Lord, who doesn't care about the existence of the Lord. Even to them the Lord is very, very attentive, and he tries different ways just to deliver them. Lord sits as Paramatma within the heart, Lord guides us from within, and different ways and different aspects Lord tries to even dictate them from within. So when his Lord is attentive for them, then naturally for those who are practicing devotional service, Lord will definitely be always attentive. And it's up to us that we do. It's Gajendra in this prayers, he says that even when I was not praying to you, it was not that you didn't care about me or you were not attentive to me. But then the Lord wants that the devotee also becomes more and more sincere in his practice of devotional service. So same way, whatever activities we do, even if we are doing inattentive things, even if we are doing inattentive chanting, one thing we should always know, that Lord is always attentive. But then he is also attentively seeing that how we are being inattentive. So then we should understand that when the Lord is attentive in all the circumstance, he is never lazy in our deliverance. He doesn't sit back, or he doesn't restrain from that. He's always thinking how he can deliver the living entities. Then now it's a responsibility for us that we also become attentive in our devotional practices. We also try to do our things or different activities sincerely, because if a Lord is trying so much to make us liberated or trying different ways to help us get out of these clutches of material nature, then we also have to do a little part, at least just do our activities attentively, just so that the Lord can easily, or it can become easier for the Lord to deliver us from this cycle of birth and death. So these are the true aspects we were discussing, that why it happens, why a person ends up committing sinful activities. One we discussed was association, too much prolonged association with the modes of nature, and another was inattentiveness. And the solution which Prabhupada gives finally is that one should practice this devotional service or execute the limbs of devotional service very cautiously. He should be rigidly following all the regulatory principles, rigidly doing all the different activities, all the different tools and regulations that are there. And second, he says, adhering to the lotus feet of the Lord, or always surrender to the Lord, always praying for protection from the Lord. As we say the famous shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam eva tam taranti te. That Lord's maya is very strong. It can anytime bewilder any living entity. What to speak of normal people, even great devotees are sometimes bewildered by the different activities of the Lord's illusory energy. But only when we stay surrendered to the Lord, only when we are consistently praying to the Supreme Lord, then and by rigidly following the regulative principles, can we stay safe in devotional service. Otherwise, little attentiveness on the path or little prolonged association with the modes of nature, and we will also get deviated and end up committing sinful activities. And that's what Prabhupada here mentioned in the purport, that actually he doesn't want anyone, or Lord doesn't want anyone to act sinfully. But if we only deviate from a path of devotional service, we only persist or desire to act sinfully or have material desires, then Lord as Paramatma just sanctions those desires. But it's not the desire of the Lord that he wants us to act sinfully. Rather, as we discussed, Lord is always attentive how we can deliver the living entity. Or Lord always wants to deliver the living entities, but it's up to us. If we become inattentive in our practice, then we start getting sinful desires and then we get deviated from the path. So with this, I would like to pause here. And any questions, comments we can take.
Prabhuji, but how to control this? Okay, fine, we all have like different this thing. Okay, sometimes we like move to one mode to second mode, second to third, like that. But it is always fluctuating. So how to control? How to be in one this thing? Mode.
So that's as we discussed, that how we go in the lower modes is when we prolonged associate with those modes. And so we have to understand what are the different ways of associating. One of the ways of association, as we mentioned, is associate when we are reading the books of people who are not authorized or not bona fide books. When we read so-called material books, novels and all, we are associating with those modes because we are associating with those people who have written the books. And those people may not be in the mode of goodness, or they may not be transcendental or whatever. They are just people who are in the lower modes only. So when we are reading such books, when we are reading such literature, then we are also associating with those modes, and that's why we are also being pulled down. So when we understand what are the different ways in which we are associating with these modes and stop those association, specific examples.
Like food. We should
Okay.
not eat without offering the God, right? But still when we are crossing the food stall or whatever, we have desire to eat, okay? But sometimes you will eat. You feel guilty, no doubt, you feel guilty, but still you eat. Because you like that food.
That is the...
So like, do you think it is a sin, or like, if you are following that, you will not eat without offering?
See, one thing that is most important, as I mentioned, is, as you mentioned, how to stay safe from these modes.
Yeah.
So naturally, when I'm speaking, let me speak directly, that associating with the modes of goodness means associating with those who are trying to be in the mode of goodness. When we associate with such personalities who are strictly following the rules and regulations, let's say they are devotees, there are many devotees who strictly take only prasad. Whatever happens, wherever they are, they don't want to take anything outside. So we might not be that strong enough, but we are in that association, then we'll be also careful. Or then with time staying with them, we also will get the desire that they are so nicely practicing devotional service, they are advancing so nicely, they are exhibiting all those qualities we discussed. So we also aspire for getting those qualities. Same way, if we associate with people who have those qualities in the lower modes of being glorified, of ridiculing others and such kind of personalities, then naturally with time our consciousness will also pull down. So as you mentioned, we might have many desires. We might have desires to eat outside. We might have desires to enjoy outside so many things. But if we associate with those who are in the mode of goodness or who are practicing devotional service, who are even transcendental, the great devotees who are there, then naturally by associating, be it physically with them, by reading the books they have given to us, like the books of the Acharyas, then naturally we'll develop those qualities. Or naturally we'll also develop qualities in the mode of goodness. And naturally we'll be able to give up those propensities that are there, the propensity to enjoy in this world. Because we have been there for time immemorial, naturally these propensities are there to enjoy separately from the Lord. It's within every one of us that why to offer it to the Lord, let me enjoy it for myself. But when, as I mentioned, when we are associating, when we are reading the books of Acharyas, when we are associating with those personalities who have that mood that we won't take anything without offering to the Lord, then with time we will also develop those qualities. That's how every one of us, when we stay in association, we develop those things. That if we saw everyone strictly practicing, we also got a desire that we should do this activity, like that. Association is very, very important. Be in the association in the form of physical association in the form of books, association in the form of what we are hearing. When we hear someone, that also is kind of association we are taking. So we should No, we should be choosy when we are hearing some lectures on YouTube or whatever we are hearing, whom to hear from. So all these are different ways of association. We should always be careful in what kind of association to take. Based on our association only we'll develop those qualities. Spiritual association we take, naturally these qualities will also rub off to us and we'll also develop those qualities. That. Okay, thank you very much. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की.